Coming up in today's newscast, a quiet, seemingly before a storm, returns to southern Israeli cities bordering the Gaza Strip. American ambassador to Israel David Friedman looks to advance peace outside of politics, and Israel activist and terror victim Ari Fuld gets memorialized in Manhattan. The IDF announced this morning that restrictions around the Gaza border communities erected Wednesday were now coming down. Schools and other functions that were closed have also now returned to normal operations following yesterday's early morning rocket fire that fell on a Beersheba home. Hamas denies involvement in yesterday's attack, but as the governing body in Gaza, immediately following the attack, Israel launched a series of airstrikes against Hamas targets in the Strip. IDF spokesperson Brigadier General Manelis said, quote, "The rockets that were fired are self-produced and medium-ranged. Only two organizations in Gaza have such rockets, Hamas and Islamic Jihad. It doesn't matter who fired, Hamas bears the responsibility," end quote. Around 20 targets were confirmed hit, including weapons manufacturing facilities, headquarters, posts, and underground infrastructure, according to the head of the IDF Southern Command, Major General Halevi. Halevi continued that, quote, "Everything was attacked, was destroyed. It will be difficult for Hamas to rebuild and to bring in the money to pay for reconstruction," end quote. But that was just the automatic response. Israeli officials are still weighing different approaches to the recent uptick in violence, with the Security Cabinet convening first thing Wednesday morning, and then again a short time later for an extended 5-hour session. As part of their decision, the Deputy Defense Minister Eli Ben-Dahan announced that an Iron Dome battery would be stationed in the Beersheba area, at least for the coming days. And shortly following the meeting, Prime Minister Netanyahu visited the Gaza border areas himself, where he threatened again that Hamas would regret any continued violence. There seems to be some disagreement in the cabinet, however, as Netanyahu seems to have taken a wait-and-see approach, while Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman is expected to demand a full-scale military campaign, which Energy Minister Yuval Steinitz says would be a mistake. Former National Security Advisor Major General Yaakov Amidror similarly stated that anything Israel did militarily in Gaza would just benefit Iran. And while that may be a simplification, it's not far off, considering Hamas and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad organizations have both condemned yesterday's rocket fire. They are instead blaming Palestinian Authority President Abbas for trying to instigate conflict amidst Egyptian efforts to broker peace between Hamas and Israel. Moreover, President Abbas's fault or not, Egyptian intelligence chief Abbas Kamel just announced a postponing of his trip that was scheduled to begin today due to the spike in violent tensions. He was set to visit Gaza, the West Bank, and Israel in efforts to continue brokering negotiations. Egyptian officials reportedly set a new date for Kamal's visit in the coming days. Now moving our focus back to Beersheba, single mother Miri Tamano and her 3 children were left homeless after yesterday's Gaza rocket attack destroyed their home. The rocket was launched around 3:39 a.m., causing sirens to blare across the Negev, and thanks to that, Miri was able to save her and her children's lives by using those precious few minutes before the rocket actually hit to drag her family to a reinforced room in the house. By some miracle, only 7 people were treated for shock after the attack, including Miri and her 3 children, and just 3 people were taken to the Soroka Medical Center in Beersheba for light bruising sustained while falling on the way to the nearby shelter. But while Miri Tamano and her family narrowly avoided a terrible fate, their troubles are seemingly only beginning. The Tamano family is now kindly asking the general public to help them, as Miri explained that they now need basic necessities, because, quote, "I have no home to go to. I have nothing," end quote. Miri wrote out a list of things that the family needs, including shampoo, conditioner, liquid soap, cleaning products, kitchen utensils, bottled water, sweetened beverages, and much, much more. The handwritten note by the mother also asked for donations of clothing, shoes, and games for her children since the damage done to the house was so severe they lost all their possessions. After reading the letter, Jewish Agency Chairman Isaac Herzog said the organization will provide the family with 8,000 shekels, or about $2,200. And Herzog also released an official statement saying, quote, "The Jewish Agency, through the Fund for Victims of Terror, will continue to assist as much as possible the residents of the South and the Gaza border region in order to help them cope with the effects of terrorism," end quote. The Jewish Agency Terror Victims Fund is supported by JFNA, Keren HaYesod, and foundations from all over the world. And since starting it, it's assisted over 7,000 families. But it's not going to be enough. So please, if interested in directly helping the Tamano family, Miri insists you call +972 50202 9695. In a first for the world body, Chagai Elad, the head of Israeli NGO B'Tselem, is today scheduled to address the United Nations Security Council during their weekly session on the Middle East. Elad will likely discuss alleged Israeli violations of human rights and the scheduled demolition of the illegally built Bedouin village Khan al-Amal. Well, as you might expect, Israeli officials have already been scrambling not only to attempt to stop Elad's address entirely, but at the very least, as Israeli UN envoy Dani Danon says, to expose the incitement and lies of both the Palestinians and B'Tselem at the session. Well, here with more is Israeli author and journalist with Yediot Achronot, Ben-Dror Yemini. Thank you so much for coming back in. Let's just open with, how much damage do you think Elad could actually pose to Israel at the United Nations Security Council?
Well, when we speak about damage, we have to speak about something which is going on. I mean, it's not because of his appearance today.
Of course.
It's something that B'Tselem and other NGOs, like Breaking the Silence, they do it again and again. Now, we have to be very accurate. It's not that everything that they're saying is a lie. It's not the story. It's not the story is that many times they take events out of context and they present those events like, well, you see, Israel is a monster. Look, take Hebron, for example. I mean, we know that per square meter or square, I don't know what, I mean, there are more cameras than every other part in this world, in any conflict. And once in 4 months, they find something. Yes, there are soldiers that do not behave. We know it. The problem is that they take this event, which is one out of thousands, and they say, you know what? This is Israel. It's not Israel. I mean, if this is all you find out, you have a problem.
So is that really the damage that can be caused? Is this taking out of context and demonization?
So many times you can say something which is not a lie, but still you are lying. And that's what they do. And look, you have many NGOs of that kind. In Britain, for example, Coalition Against War, that was against the war in Iraq and Afghanistan. Will anybody invite somebody from this organization, which is a big one, to the United Nations? No way. No way. This phenomena of Israelis that are going to the international bodies and demonize Israel, it's quite a unique one.
So you really think it's a double standard to invite Elad in the first place?
I mean, tell me. Did you ever see somebody from a democratic country? I mean, we are not, it can happen. When we are not speaking about democratic countries, you have this kind of opposition NGOs, which is fair enough, but they do not live in the country. So they come to represent something which does not exist in the country. Israel is a democracy. I mean, 80% of the journalists, let's admit it, are against the government or criticize the government. I mean, we have it here. We don't need anybody to go outside, not to any campus or not to any international body like Human Rights Council or any other body to say that Israel is violating human rights and so on.
Okay, so with that in mind, you have the ICC prosecutor, Bensouda, who is now saying, this demolition of Khan al-Ahmar might violate the Rome Statute. We're not even really a signatory to the Rome Statute. So again, how seriously should we be taking what comes out of the ICC today? We
should, because we are talking about a process. We are talking about process. Just 2 days ago, there was a demonstration in Berlin, and people, I mean, supporting the BDS, supporting. Now, the point is that they are supporting human rights, but while supporting human rights, they are becoming more and more anti-Israelis. It's happened again and again. So we are talking about so many Israeli NGOs that are funded by the EU and by European countries. They are going to European countries, they are going to international bodies and actually demonize Israel again and again, single out Israel again and again, and so on and so on. This is the process of demonization.
All right. Ben-Dror, thank you so much for coming back in and sharing with us. All right, in other news, United States Ambassador to Israel David Friedman met Tuesday with a group of both Palestinian and Israeli business leaders to discuss economic cooperations that could operate outside the purview of politics. The meeting was a closed-door event in the city of Ariel in the West Bank, and it was put together by the Judea and Samaria Chamber of Commerce and Industry. During the meeting, Ambassador Friedman reportedly pushed for a future of peaceful coexistence based on civilian-led economic interests, with one NGO founding attendee telling the Times of Israel that Friedman even, quote, promised to speak to Israeli officials if we face any obstacles in carrying out our projects, end quote. Tweeting later, Friedman said that the Palestinian and Israeli business leaders he met with are, quote, ready, willing, and able to advance joint opportunity and peaceful coexistence. People want peace and we are ready to help. Is the Palestinian leadership listening? End quote. But not everyone is as enthused. The Palestinian Authority has long been out of contact with Washington following the United States' embassy move to Jerusalem from Tel Aviv, as well as massive financial aid cuts to Palestinian organizations and the closure of the PA offices in D.C., cuts that Friedman stood behind as part of the greater good. Further, other critics like J Street argue that this is just another effort to support the Israeli settlement enterprise. J Street's Vice President of Government Affairs, Dylan Williams, said that, quote, by making an official public appearance at an event in an Israeli West Bank settlement, Ambassador Friedman once again crossed a major long-standing red line of bipartisan U.S. policy, and that the Trump administration continues to send a clear message of support for the settlement movement and the agenda of the Israeli right, end quote. But whether Friedman supports the settlements or not, there's no evidence to support that statement this time around. In fact, originally, Friedman and his team were to hold the meeting in Hebron, where most of the Palestinian business heads attending the meeting are from. But a security detail moved the meeting last minute to Ariel for undisclosed security reasons. That aside, the meeting did reportedly go very well, with one American embassy official saying that Friedman was really encouraged by the enthusiasm and commitment to working together. So maybe, just maybe, his seemingly roundabout apolitical plan might just work. Back in 2006, the gruesome and horrific murder of 13-year-old girl Ta'ir Rada shocked the Israeli nation. Her body was found in her school bathroom in Katzrin in the Golan Heights, with slashes to her neck, stab wounds across her body, and severe blows to her head. But today, 12 years later, new evidence is now shedding light on a suspect who apparently was previously exonerated by authorities in Rada's case years ago. ILTV correspondent Doriel Mizrahi has the details.
Thanks, Aaron. So yeah, like you said, the victim was Ta'ir Rada, a 13-year-old girl, and although there's a man named Roman Zadorov sitting in jail for the murder, there has been intense debate regarding his conviction since the very beginning. And many, including his lawyers and thousands of members of the public, insist he was framed for an act he didn't even commit.
So who's the real murderer then?
So the real murderer is believed to be a woman whose name is not being made public by court order, and it's known that she suffers from a mental illness. A witness arrived on Sunday to the police station in Nazareth to testify that the suspect, now known as Aleph Kuf, confessed to her that she killed Rada. In fact, Aleph Kuf claims to have told 3 people that she committed the murder and killed Rada.
Okay, so that's incredulous. How was Aleph Kuf exonerated then, as I understand she was many years ago during investigations?
Yeah, that's a great question because it really can be confusing. But 6 years after the murder, a man disguised as A, which happens to be Aleph Kuf's ex-boyfriend, reported to police that his ex-girlfriend was in fact the one who murdered Rada. There was also a documentary that came out called Shadow of Truth about 2 years ago, in which A had undergone 3 polygraph tests and was found to be speaking the truth regarding Aleph Kuf. But Supreme Court judges who examined A's testimony at the time of the investigation didn't accept his claims.
That sounds crazy. It's shocking that the police didn't investigate further after seeing this.
Yeah, and that's not even it. There was a report written by a psychiatrist who spoke with Aleph Kuf back in 2014, in which Aleph Kuf said she had a strong drive to kill someone and is containing that urge. She went on also to say that she purchased a knife and a pair of gloves with the intention of killing her neighbor. After that, the psychiatrist sent her for involuntary commitment in a psychiatric hospital for evaluation immediately. But since then, she's been released.
All right, so you're telling me about these witnesses and these reports. Even the Netflix documentary special. But as you said, Zadorov has been sitting in jail for the murder for 12 years.
Yeah, he was actually sentenced in a 2-to-1 decision to life in prison 4 years after he was arrested. But Justice Yoram Danziger, who was the one opposing the sentencing, said there was sufficient reasonable doubt to exonerate Zadorov. And still today, there's much public debate on Zadorov's conviction, which focused on the type of knife he used in the murder, which was never found, and a bloody footprint found on the victim's jeans that did not match Zadorov's footprints. There's literally 0 evidence to link Zadorov to this crime, and even Ta'ir Rada's mother doesn't believe he's guilty. But up until now, each of his appeals against the rulings were rejected.
So given this new evidence then, I'm assuming they will want to appeal again.
Yeah, for sure. His lawyer, Yaron Malevi, has said for years now that he won't stop until the truth comes out and Zadorov's name will be cleared. He is now planning on filing a request for retrial in the coming months, so really only time will tell where these developments will actually lead.
All right, well, I really hope they investigate all of the evidence this time around and get to the truth. Doriel, thank you so much.
Thank you, Aaron.
A Jewish man from Uganda has now been denied a visa to study in Israel. 28-year-old Asiimwe Rabin applied to study at a conservative yeshiva program in Jerusalem, but was told this week that the Interior Ministry has rejected his application. And this is despite Rabin leading the first ever birthright trip to Israel for Ugandan Jews just last month. Rabin hails from a small Ugandan community of Jewish converts called the Abayudaya, which has been observing Jewish laws for over a century. In fact, Rabin's hometown of Mbale has 7 synagogues, a mikveh, and 2 Jewish schools. And the community traces their religious affiliation to an African chieftain and elephant hunter named Semei Kakungulu. In the early 1900s, Kakungulu rejected all forms of biblical religion that he had been taught by missionaries of the English Protestant and French Catholic faiths. Instead, he studied Judaism and the 5 books of Moses. Kakungulu then taught what he learned about Judaism to members of the community and gained many followers who began observing Jewish laws and raising their children in the Jewish faith. Yet the chief rabbinate in Israel has not recognized this community as Jewish because the members of this community were converted under the guidance of U.S. conservative rabbis in the conservative movement, which Israel's conversion authority doesn't recognize. Now, normally the Interior Ministry accepts visa requests by those who apply for citizenship through the law of return, including those who have at least one Jewish grandparent, who went through an Orthodox conversion, or who married someone who is Jewish. But although the Jewish Agency for Israel officially recognized this community back in 2016, people who hail from the Abayudaya community have struggled to gain recognition by the Interior Ministry. So the question then becomes, how do those from the Abayudaya community and their children fit into Israel's law of return? This is an ongoing struggle, and so hopefully the Interior Ministry, along with the Chief Rabbinate, will find an amicable solution. More business and sales have been conducted online than ever before, yet there's still something very wrong with the buyer experience, and that's that it's missing a human understanding of what we're really looking to buy in the first place. For example, knowing the difference between a swimsuit and a business suit, when all you gave the search is suit. Well, Twiggle has created a platform for e-commerce companies to serve their customers more accurately, and CEO and founder of Twiggle, Amir Konigsberg, is here now to tell us all about it. Amir, thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you. So again, tell us a little bit about Twiggle and how it works.
Fantastic. So we founded Twiggle 4.5 years ago. And Twiggle's a search company. We provide search technologies to some of the biggest retailers in the world. Okay. And we help level the playing field with Amazon, allowing companies which aren't Amazon and play in the e-commerce space to actually compete by giving them a tech advantage.
So this is making the search engine smarter.
Correct. So the Insight search engine, the search engine which you actually find when you're on a retailer's website.
Why is this more accurate than, say, going to Google and typing, I want to buy a suit?
Fantastic. Google's great. I used to work for Google. I love Google. We all do. But Google's a general search engine, right? It's where you go to search for all kinds of information. We built a search engine which is unique to e-commerce because e-commerce is a very specific type of use case. You're looking for a particular product. That product has information. You have particular needs. We understand all these things using very complex AI, which we've built.
All right, so, again, you mentioned earlier this is like for companies who want to maybe compete with bigger companies like Amazon and other sales companies. So is that really who this is meant for? Or, if Amazon called you up tomorrow, you'd say, yeah, sure.
Well, so this is actually meant for companies who really want to compete with Amazon. Today, Amazon takes 49% of every of the US online sales market and 5% of the total retail sales in the US. That's a big problem for companies who don't have Amazon's resources. We're there to help them, not just the biggest ones in the market, which we work with today, companies like Walmart and Rakuten, but also smaller companies as well. All
right, and where is Twiggle available? How do these small companies, if they want to take advantage of the Twiggle platform, how do they get in contact?
Twiggle.com. You've got to contact us there. We can also do online demos. One of the Twiggle team based in New York City or in Tel Aviv.
Where are you guys working already?
We're working on Walmart. Different Walmart assets, Walmart Canada, Walmart UK, different Walmart companies.
So people are interested to see the results of this platform.
Absolutely, and a bunch of other websites as well in the fashion domains and home domains.
Well, Dr. Konigsberg, thank you so much for coming in again.
Thank you for having me.
It was a pleasure to have you. And Twiggle.com, everybody.
Twiggle.com. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now, in other news, Ari Fuld, the American-Israeli father of 4 and pro-Israel activist who was killed by 17-year-old Palestinian terrorist Khalil Jabarin in Gush Etzion last month, was memorialized in a heart-wrenching and powerful ceremony in Manhattan yesterday. Hundreds of people from all walks of life attended the commemoration, which was spearheaded by the Riverdale Jewish community and Riverdale rabbi Avi Weiss. One of the attendees was New York Consul General of Israel, Dani Dayan, who spoke to the crowd and said that, quote, "The Fuld family decided a few decades ago that they wanted to cease to be spectators and to participate in the greatest adventure of the Jewish people in the last 2,000 years by immigrating to Israel," end quote. Fuld dedicated his life to pro-Israel advocacy and fighting against the BDS movement. He often countered anti-Israel groups, including the Jewish Voice for Peace and J Street organizations, and did everything he could to bring to light the facts, history, international law, and morality that encompasses the narrative of the Jewish people. Fuld also appeared regularly on the ILTV show Frenemies, among others, bringing his views passionately but respectfully to the debate table. And Fuld will be remembered as a larger-than-life hero even in his last moments of life. After he was stabbed in the back, in his final breaths, Fuld managed to get back on his feet, chase his attacker, jump a fence, and neutralize the assailant so that he couldn't proceed to hurt anyone else. The assailant had been heading towards a young female falafel stand worker, Hila Peretz, and by neutralizing the terrorist, Fuld managed to save her life. Peretz later said in a statement, quote, "The terrorist was right behind me. I started running down the stairs, but he jumped to try and get in front of me. The man that was killed really saved my life. He's not just a hero, he gave his life for me," end quote. Since Fuld's death, thousands of people around the world have come forward to salute his courage and his dedication to the State of Israel and its people. Fuld even recently received a posthumous Medal of Valor from the Public Security Minister Gilad Erdan. Ari is deeply missed by all who knew him.
And now for this week's Top 5 with ILTV's Emmanuel Kadosh.
So we've talked a bunch about Israeli designers, musicians, artists, chefs, hotels, restaurants. Wow. We've really covered a lot of topics now that I think about it. But what we haven't ever covered is the top 5 best music videos designed by Israelis. First up, and honestly most exciting for me, Beyonce and Jay-Z's music video for Ape Shit. Israeli producer Natan Schottenfels revealed in a nonchalant Facebook post that he produced the insanely viral video filmed at the Louvre, the first music video in years that the couple has dropped together, and it racked up over 18 million views in just the first 3 days. Beyonce and Jay-Z are seen posing in front of iconic art pieces like the Mona Lisa, and now the video casually has over 125 million views. So yeah, you could say he did a pretty good job. Second on the list is the music video for the Coldplay song Up and Up. Israeli directors Vanya Hyman and Gal Muja won international praise for this unique and unbelievable work for the hit single of the British band back in 2015. Considered one of the best music videos ever made, the video went viral real quick with over 3 million views on YouTube in just one day. This is just a little glimpse, people. Go check it out for yourselves and prepare to be amazed. Third up is Lady Gaga's 2016 Grammy tribute to David Bowie, which was only made possible with the help of Israeli-developed RealSense vision tech, built in Intel's Haifa offices. During the live performance, holography, robotics, and 3D vision tech were used to transform Lady Gaga's face into real-time reflecting phases of David Bowie's career. And not to mention, this was the first time these technologies were used in a live performance. Epic, to say the least. Fourth up is the Israeli singer, songwriter, musician, video director Oren Levi, who earned himself a Grammy nomination for his 2009 hit, Her Morning Elegance, which has over 33 million views on YouTube. And then again for his video for Secondhand Lovers, in which he wrote the video script, directed, and played the main role in. Multi-talented is an understatement. Last but of course not least is yet another Coldplay music video for the song Hymn for the Weekend, where the band counted on Tel Aviv's Yaron Yashinsky studio for the visual design and animation. The video may have been filmed in India, but all of its design, animation, and visual elements were created right here in Israel by an 8-person team. In just 2 days, the video racked up 18 million views, and Yashinsky says the biggest achievement was that the video was made right here in Israel. That's all for today's Top 5. Back to you.
And now for our Hebrew word of the day. There is now new evidence that the actual murderer of Ta'ir Rada is not the person who was convicted and imprisoned for the crime. And so that's why our Hebrew word today is re'aya, meaning evidence. Police have just discovered that the actual suspected murderer, a woman identified by the initials Aleph Kuf, recently confessed to another young woman that she and not the convicted man, Roman Zadorov, murdered 13-year-old Ta'ir Rada back in 2006. And in fact, there is additional evidence, or re'aya, pointing to this Aleph Kuf as the actual killer. Moreover, as you may have discovered, there is literally no re'aya, or evidence, connecting Zadorov to the crime apart from his flimsy confession taken under questionable circumstances. Now, obviously, with this new information, it looks like police will have to look through and find a lot more evidence, or re'aya, to make an arrest. But hopefully, the true culprit or culprits in this heinous tragedy will be brought to justice soon.
Now let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. Tonight will be partly cloudy and warm with a low of 71 or 22 degrees Celsius. Then the weekend will also be pleasant and partly cloudy with highs around 82 or 28 degrees Celsius. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.65 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv, and don't forget to follow us on Facebook at Israel English News and on Twitter at ILTV News. I'm Aaron Porras. Thank you for watching.